Hello everyone out there in YouTube land. I'm the Scent Maven. Welcome back to my channel, Shopping in Scents, for a Dollar Tree movie review. So I'm going to be reviewing Robert the Doll, which is a movie that I picked up at the Dollar Tree. There are many movies in the Robert series, and I'm starting to think I'm got the curse of Robert because I've tried to film this movie. I've tried to film this video like about 15 times and I keep messing it up. So I'm going to go through it, and how it comes out, it comes out. So, Robert the Doll. The movie is about the Otto family. So there's the mom slash wife, Jen, the husband slash dad, Paul, and the son, Gene. And they have this housekeeper named Agatha that works for them. She's an older woman. She's worked for them for about 2 years. She starts to get senile and forgetful, and so they decide to fire her. And Agatha is not thrilled about that. So when the mom fires her, she says, "I'm really sorry that we have to fire you, that we have to let you go." And Agatha is like, "You will be." It's very creepy. So she says, "Can I say goodbye to Gene before I leave?" She goes to Gene's room and she says, "I have a gift for you." So she gives him this doll, this creepy looking doll. And she said, "This doll will be your friend now that I'm not going to be here." And he's like, "I don't understand why you have to leave." And she said, "You know, your mom fired me, whatever, but this doll will be your friend." And he's like, "I'm a boy, I don't play with dolls." But she's like, "This is a special doll." So reluctantly, he accepts the doll, and he seems to take to it right away as soon as she leaves. So, after Robert has been with the family for a little bit, weird things start to happen. So, in the kitchen, a glass jar with flour is knocked over, and we see little footprints in the flour, and the mom accuses her son Gene of making a mess in the kitchen and not cleaning it up, and he's like, "No, it was Robert." And of course, she doesn't believe him. And then the mom is a painter, an artistic painter, not like a house painter. And she's working on this really beautiful painting, and she drops a glass of water. She goes to get paper towels to clean it up. She comes back and she finds that the painting has been defaced with red paint, and she's furious because she's been working on the painting for forever. And you see little footprints in the red paint, and again she yells at her son, "How could you do this?" And he's like, "It's not me, it was Robert." And she doesn't believe him. In both these instances, they show that the doll's feet, the bottom of the doll's feet, has flour on them in the first case and has red paint on them in the second case. But the mom doesn't seem to notice that. And she's convinced that it's her son doing these things. Even though they don't give us any kind of inkling in the story that the kid is a bad kid or that he would do something like this. He seems like a really nice kid. So I don't know why. Well, of course the mom is not going to believe that the doll did it. That would be, a little weird. Which brings us to a subplot point in the movie that I think is really interesting. So they reveal to us that the mom is on meds for a mental condition. She's recovering from a mental illness. And they don't tell us what the mental illness is. They just say that she had been hearing voices, among other, issues that she had. So it leads me to believe that she may have been schizophrenic, but she's on these meds and she's supposed to be better. And in the movie, she seems pretty normal. So that provides like a good sub-story, because when she starts to kind of believe that Robert the doll might be responsible for these odd occurrences that progressively become more violent, and she tries to convince her husband that it's the doll, he blames her mental illness. So there's one scene in which she goes to her son's room and she hears voices, two voices talking to each other. And she talks to her son about this, and she's like, "I heard somebody, who are you talking to?" And she's like, he's like, "I was talking to Robert." So So she tells her husband, you know, I heard these two distinct voices, and one of them was not Jean, you know, it was two different voices. And he's like, you're hearing voices again, you know, like he's blaming her mental illness. So Robert becomes progressively more violent, and eventually the mom sits down with her son and says, you know, tell me the truth about Robert. Tell me, you know, what's really going on, and I won't be mad. And so the son reveals that he and Robert talk to each other, that Robert can be mean sometimes, but most of the time he makes him laugh, and that Robert doesn't like the mom or dad because they were mean to Agatha, and for whatever other reasons, he just doesn't like them. So, yeah. What other things can I tell you about the movie? Okay, so let me tell you about the quality of the movie. I hesitate to say that it's a B movie. It's definitely a B movie because it doesn't have any famous actors or actresses in the movie. But it's not a low quality film, you know, structurally, technically. The acting is not bad. I think the mom is quite good in the movie, especially when she starts to get really angry and frustrated at the doll. There's one scene where she confronts the doll and she's screaming at it, and she's like, you did this, talk to me, talk, speak. And she's, you know, really flying off the handle. Some very good dramatic scenes, some good acting in this movie. So there's that. When I say it's like a B movie, it's sort of like a TV movie. So you have some unknown actors, albeit they, you know, although they seem like pretty good actors. I'm not so crazy about the husband in the movie. I don't know if it's his acting portrayal or the fact that I just find him kind of annoying, because here the wife is struggling. First, she thinks her son is misbehaving in a way that's not like him. Then she's convinced that this doll is trying to kill her and hurt her family. And all the while, the husband just blames her mental illness, tries to pacify her, tries to make her seem like she's crazy, you know, just makes her feel like she's stupid, you know, like, I don't know. He's just very, you just want to beat him up in the movie, you know, like, believe your wife, she's telling you the truth. And he's such a wishy-washy, such a mush, you know. And no matter what happens in the movie, he's like so passive. Like Robert, in one scene, Robert attacks the Jean's babysitter, and he's like, oh, you know, and he pushes her down a flight of stairs, and she's all bloody at the bottom of the stairs, and she ends up in the hospital, and he's all like, you know, accidents happen, these things happen, you know, and whatever. So yeah, there are a couple of weird, there are a lot of weird things in this movie. So the doll itself is scary looking. It doesn't look like the doll that the movie is based on, the real Robert the doll. And there's no CGI work, there's no special effects. So the whole doll killing scenario has to be accomplished with camera trickery. So if Robert is going to like kill the babysitter, right? Or he's supposed to be walking, or he's supposed to be moving, they'll just show like a close-up of his feet, which could be like somebody moving the feet with like two shoes on a pole or something, you know. So they'll show close-ups of the feet, and then like if he's gonna stab someone, they'll show the hand with the knife coming down, but they never show the whole doll in a complete shot, walking, moving, killing, whatever. It's always like a close-up of the hand, a close-up of the feet, or if he's you know, like there are parts of the movie where he's moved. So they'll show him sitting on the chair, and then he's in another room, and then they do a close-up of his face, and they play this spooky music, this evil music. Also in scenes where he's supposed to be running or moving, you'll see from his perspective, like lower on the ground, what would be the doll's perspective. Yeah, so they do what they can, I think, with the budget that they have. So I think with that they did pretty well. And there are, like I said, there are some very creepy scenes. There are some very dramatic scenes. There's some pretty good acting. There's also some pretty bad acting in the movie. At one point, for some reason, when the husband and wife are speaking to each other, they're constantly calling each other by their first names. So when you're having a conversation with someone, you're just going back and forth. But for some reason, it's like, you know, Paul, why don't you believe me when I tell you about the doll? And he's like, Jen, you know that you have this illness. Paul, I'm telling you that this is true. Jen, you know that, and they keep going back and forth calling each other by their first name. Like it gets weird, you know. The other thing is, it's kind of unclear in the beginning where the movie is taking place, in what country. So the Otto family, they all have English accents. So you kind of think they're in England, but everybody around them, the babysitter and Agatha and all the other characters, they have American accents. But then when the husband and wife are driving to dinner, they're in the car and the steering wheel is on the opposite side, as it would be in the UK or Europe. So I'm thinking to myself, oh, what's happening here? So I'm like, they obviously, they have to be in the United States because everybody around them is speaking with an American accent. So, but what about the car? So I'm like, well, maybe they moved from England and they brought the car with them. And I guess you can drive, it's a regular car. You could drive it on an American street, even if the steering wheel is on the opposite side. So that was kind of strange. The other thing is the movie, when it first starts off, it's a black screen and they have this text with the background about the actual Robert the Doll. So you have to sit there and read, and the text is very small. So there's that. I thought it was a kind of mediocre movie. It was a dollar's worth of entertainment. I'll give it that. Was it worth more than $1? I mean, if you're really into horror movies and you are really into creepy doll movies, maybe. If you buy any of their, now let me get to the series. There are 5. There are 5 movies in the Robert series. They started in 2015. I thought that I had lucked out and got the 3 in sequential order, but apparently I did not. So this is the way that they go. Robert came out in 2015. The Curse of Robert in 2016. Then I'm missing one, Robert and the Toy Maker in 2017. The Curse of Robert, not the Curse of Robert, the Revenge of Robert in 2018. And then finally, Robert Reborn in 2019. And if you buy them on Amazon, they range in price anywhere from about $6 to about $10. So I don't know. And the other thing is, even though the movie had its good points, it had some good dramatic scenes, some really creepy scenes, and definitely the ending was really disturbing. I don't feel like I am itching to watch the next one in the series. Like, there are certain movies where you have to know what happens next, or you're so curious about what happens next. I'm trying to find a good example of this. I don't know, I want to say Final Destination, but really each one of those movies stands on its own. But I have to say, as a horror series, I really love Final Destination. I love all of the the Final Destinations. I think there's 5 of them. And they all follow the same pattern. So I really liked all of them. The Saw movies, not so much. When it started to get to like the 4th and 5th, 6th, 7th one, I was like, oh my God, there's just too many of them. So yeah. If you guys are more interested in the actual Robert the Doll, you can research him online. I'll tell you a little bit about what I found out about him. So from what I could gather, there are mixed stories. There are a couple of different stories. So the way it goes is that apparently a grandfather bought the doll in 1904 for his grandson. Now, what happened to the doll after that made him evil, or allegedly evil, is the subject of debate. So, one story says that the Otto family, which is what they're called in the movie and what the actual family is called. One story says that the Otto family was a well-to-do family, and they had servants, and one of the servants supposedly engaged in black magic, and when the mom found out about it, she fired the servant, and then the servant cursed the doll. The strange occurrences that happened with Robert in the house, according to the actual story, is that he, moved from place to place in the house with no explanation. That the son, actually his name was Robert Gene Otto, and he named the doll Robert after himself, and then he went by his middle name Gene. That they heard him having conversations in his room with the doll, and with 2 distinctive voices, one of which could not have been the child's voice. So apparently he was an artist. Maybe that's where they got that from in the movie. And he had the doll with him for most of his life, even when he got married, and it supposedly caused friction between him and his wife. She supposedly put the doll in the attic after the husband passed away, and then the house, I guess when she passed away, the house was sold to another family with a daughter, and they found the doll in the attic. Supposedly the doll terrorized the daughter, and eventually it ended up in a museum in Key West, where it's now a tourist attraction, and people come to see Robert the Doll. And there's these kinds of restrictions where they tell you you can't, or you're not supposed to take a picture with Robert or of Robert without his permission, or else he, will, take revenge on you. And they have him in this glass box, and they have his name, and then underneath it is like an address. So they have the address there for people who have wronged Robert or upset him, and they write to him asking him for his forgiveness. In a lot of ways, it seems like the Annabelle doll is also in a museum. Lorraine Warren, who you know from the Conjuring movies, she has a museum in her house. It was Ed and Lorraine Warren, and they have this museum. They both since passed away. I know that, yeah, they did. And I think the son-in-law runs the museum now. Anyway, you're not supposed to touch the Annabelle doll. It's in this case, and there was a story. I was watching this documentary where the son-in-law, I think is now the curator of the museum, said that somebody visited and poked fun at the Annabelle doll and then left the museum and ended up in either a car or a motorcycle accident. I don't know. So anyway, that is my review of Robert the Doll. I thought it was a kind of mediocre movie. I don't know why or how they made 5 of them. And yeah, I'll try to do more of these reviews. I'll try to watch all the ones that I have, and I don't know, I don't see myself buying the other 2 in the series. Maybe. They all seem more ridiculous Who knows? All right. Sorry, Robert. Remember to comment, rate, subscribe, and follow me on Instagram at Shopping and Sense, and I will see you all in a future video. But until then, goodbye everyone out there in YouTube land.